I'm just throwing together a quick video to address several videos that I found posted by the YouTube user known as NFilmFree. The multi-part video series addresses the age of the Earth and tries to show that it is in fact around 6,000 years old. It's a lecture by one Dr. Mark Surtees, and yes, he is an actual doctor with a degree from at least reasonably accredited university. I'm not here to refute every point in the videos, just the 3 points he tries to make about astronomy and what he believes they show about the age of the Earth. Solar eclipses, long-period comets, and what he calls the faint sun paradox. I'm going to take them in reverse order as the faint sun paradox is the most crazy of the bunch. I'm not going to bother citing any sources here as I'm making this video on the fly, and another video I'm working on will address the life of stars in detail. I'm just here to poke holes in these arguments. Dr. Surtees starts his faint sun paradox argument by saying that main sequence stars last 10 billion years. If the evolutionary story is correct. I really wish I had a good klaxon noise to play in the background right now, as that simple statement is so full of wrongful implications that I'm not sure where to start. Astronomy has nothing to do with evolutionary theory. You complete idiot! Evolutionary theory could be proven wrong tomorrow, and that wouldn't mean a single thing for astronomy or astrophysics, though I suppose the astrobiologists would be rather disgruntled. And secondly, stating main sequence stars last 10 billion years is like me saying people live 90 years. Sure, some people live 90 years, but that doesn't immediately mean everyone lives 90 years. Let's revise this statement to make it more correct, shall we? The main sequence of G-spectral stars such as our star last about 10 billion years, if stellar theory is correct. There, that's better. Next, he goes into an explanation of how fusion in the sun converts hydrogen into helium. For the most part, his explanation is correct, so I'm not going to mess with it. He states that a star undergoes the fusion of helium will be brighter than one undergoing the fusion of hydrogen. Also true, followed by the statement that our star is about halfway through its main sequence. Again, true. So about half of the hydrogen should have been turned into helium by now. Cue the klaxon. Let's amend that statement. About half of the hydrogen in the sun's core should have been converted to helium by now. Unfortunately, this is the basis for his next totally errant assumption, and what I suppose he would call the faint sun paradox. He says that because helium fusion is brighter and hotter than hydrogen fusion, and half of the sun's hydrogen is gone, the sun ought to be 45% brighter than it was when the Earth was formed. Unfortunately for our friend Dr. Surtees, that is not the way it works. The fusion of our sun's helium will not begin until after it exits the main sequence, having consumed all of the hydrogen in the core, and begins to collapse in on itself, thus increasing the nuclear pressure and providing the necessary conditions for helium fusion. I won't discuss the rest of this argument as it rests on this falsehood. 1 point for Zebedian, 0 points for the doctor, and by extension NFilmFree, for posting such absolute drivel on the internet. The doctor's next argument deals with long-period or Oort cloud comets. He talks for a while about how a long-period comet should degenerate in about 1,000 years, and how this somehow proves the solar system can't be very old because we still have comets around. Then he blabbers for a while about some large object that has been spotted out in the Oort cloud, and how it isn't even a comet, so we don't have any direct proof that the Oort cloud even exists. Let's take a look at this claim of his. Firstly, I'd like to say that when he says long-period comet, he means short-period comet. A long-period Oort cloud comet will take around 16 million years to complete a single orbit around the Sun, if it has an orbital distance of around 1 light year, which is about the max. Even on the inner rim of the Oort cloud, about a half a light year, the orbital period is still about 5.5 million years. So when the doctor says long period comets, he really means short period comets. And short period comets do not originate in the Oort cloud, meaning that the doctor's argument is rather moot in light of the fact that it's irrelevant whether we have proof of the Oort cloud or not, as he is not addressing Oort cloud comets. He is instead addressing Kuiper belt comets. I'm not quite sure why he was not able to correctly make the distinction, but let's assume that he was talking about Kuiper Belt comets and that he actually was able to make the distinction. Now, we're going to assume, and it actually is a pretty good figure, that like he says, the average comet from the Kuiper Belt will last about 1,000 years after it has fallen in, meaning that another comet has come so close to it that the gravity has slingshotted it around towards the sun. Now, the Doctor seems to think that this 1,000-year melting period somehow proves that there couldn't possibly be enough comets to last the 5 billion year period since the beginning of the solar system. However, if we actually examine this claim and consider that the average comet is about 1/1000th of an Earth mass, and that we've had 5 billion years of time for these comets to fall in, and that the average comet will last only 1,000 years, that means it only takes 5 million comets to fill up this time period, with comets occasionally being knocked into the solar system. Now, that sounds like a lot, but when you consider that 5 million comets, as they have about 1/1000th of an Earth mass, means that 5 million comets is about 1/1000th of a solar mass, that's really not that many comets. And I'm going to poke a little more fun at the Doctor just because he said that there was a large object seen out in the Oort cloud and that this somehow wasn't proof that there were comets out there. I think the good Doctor is a little bit confused on the exact definition of a comet. You see, a comet is any planetesimal object made of ice that isn't in itself large enough to be a planet. Pluto, for all the stigmas, is much closer to being a comet than it is to being a planet. In fact, the only reason we even consider it a planet is because we found it before we really began to understand what comets were. For some reason, Pluto always gets labeled as a Kuiper Belt object. I guess people are kind of afraid that Pluto might be offended if we call it a comet or something. The first point that the Doctor makes in his videos, and the final point that I'm going to address regarding astronomy, is how the moon perfectly eclipses the sun. To fully understand the implications of this statement, I'm going to put a comment by Nefilmfree up on the screen. Yes, I suppose we could find all kinds of wonderful things like Saturn's rings to prove that God must want us to have a beautiful solar system. Unfortunately, this argument gets a little tripped up when you consider the fact that in a few million years, a moon of Neptune, which is in retrograde orbit, will have degenerated into a fantastic set of rings to rival the like of Saturn's, and they'll probably be blue, which is a better color than the brown of Saturn's rings. Or we could consider that large storms such as the Great Red Spot on Jupiter are probably fairly common on a time scale composite to the solar system. I just made up a word, composite. That doesn't mean anything. Or we could consider the fact that Jupiter itself probably had a large set of rings like Saturn several million years ago. So the point I'm trying to make here is that there are always going to be wonderful things in the universe to look at and say, oh, isn't that beautiful? But it doesn't by itself prove anything. All that Saturn's rings prove are that we happen to be existing in the time period when Saturn has rings. A few million years from now, Neptune will have rings and Saturn's will be gone. I'm going to ignore Nefilmfree's comment about the moon receding, as this bit of math has been proven wrong by Thunderfoot already, and I'll link to the video in the side. So, for the final score, we have Zebediah 3, and I'll give Nefilmfree half a point, as I do concede that Saturn has a rather lovely set of rings.